So there is no one leading country. So Azerbaijan is a very important country within the system. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan too. Why is this organization important? This organization has the vision. This is the 2040 vision, 8 different subtopics, and the biggest issue which is emphasized this vision is the economic relation, economic integration among these countries. How Turkey can play a role because of the economically biggest country within this organization is Turkey, and Turkey have a very strategic position, which is the mention this heartland theory. Turkey can play to role to connecting the Caucasus and Central Asia, or we can say Caspian Basin countries, to the West and to the Middle East, and that way Turkey is the very important actors, not economically but politically, to connecting these countries to more open world system. Second thing is the Turkey have in a certain level. Turkey has the technological advantage certain area that can be shared with the know-how, shared with the Caspian Basin countries or the member of the OTC. So, in that way, Turkey can play the important role. But as we know, those countries, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, can also play important role to connecting Turkey with the East. As we know already, the world international system centers moving from the Atlantic to Asia Pacific. The best way and the easiest way to reaching the Asia Pacific countries is the through Caucasus and Central Asia for Turkey.
Okay. And there's concern about Chinese and Russian dominance in digital infrastructure and information spaces. Is the West doing enough to offer credible alternatives in areas like telecoms, media, or education?
I mean, currently, West is the dominant power in this technologies. I mean, the communication technologies, all the social media, or the artificial intelligence research research or companies. If you look the list, most of them either the American or the Chinese. The European is not in that area. We see the technologically two countries competing, United States and China, and of course China is the dominant. I mean, the last several years make a huge step to being a leading forces on the artificial intelligence. In that sense, this competition, those, I'd say, the Turkey or Azerbaijan and the Central Asian countries, or a member of the organization of Turkic state, should start developing their own the artificial intelligence cooperation and the system. Otherwise, these countries become totally dependent on the China and the United States. I don't think okay. Russia had the certain project, but I don't think Russia is the leading country on this field. So the main concern for the member of the organization of the Turkic state are the China and the United States.
Okay.
And they already develop a policy. China has a Silk Road, a digital Silk Road, which is trying to become a dominant force in this field in Central Asia and the Caucasus too.
Okay. Now, beyond economic levers, what forms of soft power could help the West build influence in the region? Language, universities, media partnerships?
Okay, I mean, if you look at today, the best universities in Caucasus, in Azerbaijan, in Central Asia, we see that these universities using the English language in the classroom. So that is the language is the one of the most powerful soft power element. So in other university in Azerbaijan, Nazarbayev University in Kazakhstan, the World Economy and Diplomacy University in Uzbekistan, OSCE Academy in Kyrgyzstan, you can see that they are using English language in the classroom. So that is already we see their influence. The second influence is the long time the European or Western, we should include Europe and the United States altogether, trying to impose or promote their values, their principles, which consider as the universal values to the region. If you look at the young generation, those who educated the universities which I mentioned, we see that they already accepted that. This third one is when we look at the young generation, if you ask them the question in similar condition in Turkey too, where you want to live or educate, most of them will say either Europe or the United States. So this is also showing the soft power influence. Joseph Nye, the late Harvard professor, mentioned about, yes, soft power is important, but the world is moving from soft power influence to more smart power. So we see that smart power influence in the region is very influential in that sense.
Okay, and when we say smart power, we're talking about having a good grip or a good hold on soft power, right?
Definitely. I mean, the smart power basically attract the attention of the people, or the young people especially. To the values and principle is yours. In that way, without really spending effort, you can attract their attention. They demand assistance, or they demand your values more than you promote. That way, smart power is also, you can use the different places.
Okay, and finally, Professor, what do the countries of the Greater Caspian region themselves want, and do they see multipolarity as a threat or an opportunity to redefine their global roles?
So first, let's clear that unipolar and bipolar systems, which we had, is creating opportunity to dominate one forces. Multipolar world is the preferable, but if multipolar system is increasing sometimes multipolar system increasing the local conflict, local wars. That is the dangerous part. But normally, like countries in Caucasus, in Central Asia, or the member of the Organization of Turkic State, prefer multipolar system, but the multipolar system can give the opportunity to regional alliances, like or regional institutions, organizations to emerge, like the Organization of Turkic State. In that sense, multipolar world is the beneficial. But if multipolar world is increasing potential conflict or war in the region, of course, that is the problematic area. How these countries or state in the region deal with the multipolar condition, act together under the one institution, Organization of Turkic State, even though it's established based on identity, collective identity, but right now the member states have the mutual and the common interest, as well as the collective security system that will be, they realize that these will benefit all the members. So this is a kind of condition of the win-win condition.
Okay, Professor, thank you so much for joining us today on Context. We appreciate your insights and your analysis.
Thank you for inviting me. Have a nice program.
Thank you. Now, in a region long seen as a bridge between East and West, the stakes today are rising once again. The Greater Caspian is more than a transit zone. It is a testing ground for multipolar strategy, energy, politics and sovereignty in a shifting world order. The question now is not just who courts the region, but how the region defines its own path forward. That's Context. I'm Dilek Tuna. Thank you for watching.
Welcome to AnewZ Talks from right here in Kazakhstan's capital, Astana. On this very special edition, AnewZ is joining forces with the esteemed national TV channel Zhibek Jolie Silkway TV.
What is the role of the media in diplomacy today, and how do the media shape the international agenda?
This is very important for each country to understand and to develop their own AI tools.
Today's challenge is not about I believe, about the human, but about the ethics of the AI-generated content.
We are gathering a distinguished panel of experts and an amazing audience of rising stars at Silk Road, media groups, state-of-the-art journalism school.
AI clearly is changing pretty much every industry you can think of, media being certainly one of them.
Every single person in this audience is content creator because they do have their own phone.
This project is a media project, and it helps to increase the mutual understanding between the Azerbaijani nation and Kazakhstan's nation. So everything is interconnected.
Great minds coming together to explore our theme for this edition, the convergence of media and diplomacy.
So whether you're watching in Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, or any one of 100+ AnewZ locations all around the world,
Please join us on AnewZ.
and Zhibek Jolie Silkway TV.
In 2017, headlines in Bulgaria and beyond accused Azerbaijan of secretly delivering weapons to Syrian terrorists aboard diplomatic flights. The story, pushed by Bulgarian journalist Dilyana Gaitangieva, sparked outrage. Her report claimed that 350 Silkway Airlines flights, protected by diplomatic immunity, were carrying arms to war zones, from Syria and Afghanistan to Africa. Dilyana's so-called exclusive quickly gained traction. Shared by WikiLeaks, amplified by Julian Assange, and promoted by pro-Russian voices, it seemed to expose a vast covert network involving Western intelligence, Gulf states, and Azerbaijan. But it was all a lie, or more precisely, a Russian operation. In 2025, an investigation by The Insider, authored by Roman Dobrokotov, Christo Grozev, and Michael Weiss, traced the original leak to GRU Unit 29155, the same Russian military unit linked to poisonings, sabotage plots, and global subversion. The fake whistleblower behind the leak, a fabricated persona on Twitter at @anon_BG, created by the GRU,
What we discovered was truly shocking. It turned out that over the years, many of the disinformation operations that had previously been attributed to other parts of the GRU, or even to the FSB and the Foreign Intelligence Service, had in fact been carried out by this same unit. A significant number of their disinformation campaigns had been designed to cover their tracks, covering up assassination attempts, sabotage operations, and actual killings or explosions.
The goal: discredit NATO allies, stir anti-Western sentiment, and frame Azerbaijan as a tool of the West in Syria's war. The documents were sent to Dilyana via this fake GRU account. The Silkway story was a masterpiece of Russian disinformation.
There is a clear correlation between what they do on the ground, attempted murders, real assassinations or bombings, and what they do in the cyber and disinformation sphere. It has also become clear that many journalists around the world who work with them know exactly who they're working for. Others might not know at the beginning, but eventually they either figure it out or are told directly.
The documents, flight records, diplomatic notes, and weapons manifests were later found to be either forged or selectively edited. GRU successfully injected fake stories into Western media via intermediaries like Gaitanjeva, who published the Silkway airline story in Bulgarian newspaper Trud. Russian state media amplified the claims, and Azerbaijan's reputation took the hit.
There is one journalist for whom we gathered enough evidence to name her explicitly in our report, Dilyana Gaitanjeva. Personally, it was very difficult for me to include her name, because over the years, yes, we've had online conflicts, and I've disagreed with the conclusions she's drawn, and the platforms where she's published her so-called investigations, but I always assumed that her motivation was ideological. It turns out it was not. It turns out she has in fact worked for what is probably the most terrifying department within Russian intelligence, one composed entirely of killers, people whose mission is to eliminate opposition figures, so-called traitors, and global competitors of the Kremlin.
The operation's reach extended beyond print. In 2017, WikiLeaks shared her interview, calling her firing pathetic. Assange himself publicly defended her, repeating claims that Western powers and Saudi Arabia were secretly fueling jihadist violence. Now, analysts say WikiLeaks became an amplifier for GRU propaganda, knowingly or not. The entire narrative was built on disinformation. There was no verified evidence that Azerbaijan violated arms control treaties. In fact, the accusations served Moscow's broader strategy: divide NATO, discredit their partners in the Caucasus, and shift blame for Syria's chaos away from the Kremlin and its ally, Bashar al-Assad. After her dismissal, she began cooperating with pro-Kremlin media, participated in events sponsored by the Russian Ministry of Defense, and actively promoted other conspiracy theories, including those about biolabs in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine's intelligence service SBU flagged Gaitanjeva as a probable GRU asset. In 2023, her name was listed in the Ukrainian Mirotvorets database. Critics in Bulgaria say their government ignored Ukrainian warnings.
Her relationship with this GRU unit dates back to before 2017. We can't pinpoint exactly when it began. All we know is that formal contact between representatives of the unit and Gaitanjeva herself took place via a private Twitter chat in June 2017. And by that point, their relationship had already been ongoing for at least a year. I believe that these ties may have since ended, as we've seen no communication over the past year between her and members of the unit.
In the years that followed, GRU's fingerprints showed up across Europe, in poisonings, sabotage, cyber attacks. But this case, the Silkway Airlines hoax, reveals something more subtle. Not just a bullet, but a narrative. Not a bomb, but a story, told with forged emails, fake leaks, and real journalists. And Azerbaijan, just collateral damage in Russia's disinformation war, or something more deliberate? The headlines may have faded, but the scars of disinformation remain. For journalists, it's a cautionary tale. For states like Azerbaijan, a lesson in information warfare. And for the world, a reminder. Not all propaganda screams. Some whispers, in footnotes, tweets, and forged flight logs.
What's currently the biggest challenge?
The desire for more energy as populations increase, and it's more energy of all types. It's oil, it's gas, it's nuclear, it's renewables.
Within the framework of Baku Energy Week, BP signed several important agreements.
Shah Deniz compression, be an electrified platform so the power will be supplied from shore. Project number 2, Karabakh PSA, tie back to the ACG existing platform. The third project is more exploration. It's in the area called Adua. Final project is in a field called Shafagasaman, being joined as a partner by TPAO, the Turkish oil and gas company. We're going to build a solar plant at Jibril. We'll be investing for 33 years. This is signalling the next phase.
US President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation that prevents people from certain countries from entering the United States. The proclamation fully restricts the entry of nationals from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, and Sudan, citing national security concerns.
In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country.
According to the White House, the countries facing a total ban were found to be deficient with regards to screening and vetting and determined to pose a very high risk to the United States. The proclamation also partially restricted travel to the United States by nationals from 7 other countries, including Venezuela, Burundi, and Cuba. Venezuela reacted to the proclamation, with officials warning against traveling to the United States.
Honestly, being in the US is a big risk for anyone, not just Venezuelans. If you're really that foolish, then go to the United States. Take your vacation days and go to the US. In the United States, the workforce is made up of migrants from all over the world who are there.
In addition to travel restrictions, the US president also signed a proclamation to suspend US entry of foreign nationals seeking to study or participate in exchange programs at Harvard University. The order also directs the US State Department to consider revoking existing academic or exchange visas of any current Harvard students who meet the proclamation's criteria. Harvard University has denounced Trump's executive order, calling it an illegal and retaliatory step taken by the Trump administration in violation of Harvard's First Amendment rights.
Ukraine and Russia recently exchanged proposals, but remain divided on ceasefire terms and a possible leaders' meeting. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says that Moscow should not fall for what he called Ukraine's criminal provocations. He said Russia should use both negotiations and military means to achieve its goals in Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin later said, "I agree with this." Putin also accused Ukraine of carrying out attacks on bridges in Russia's Bryansk and Kursk regions, calling them acts of terrorism aimed at disrupting the peace talks. Russia's lead negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, said Ukraine proposed a 30 to 60-day ceasefire to prepare for a potential meeting between the two presidents. Medinsky added that Russia conveyed President Putin's view that a leaders' summit is possible, but only if properly prepared. He also confirmed that Russia is ready to start a prisoner exchange between June 7th and 9th, offering to transfer 500 people. However, no name lists have been exchanged yet. In Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky rejected the Russian ceasefire memorandum, calling it an ultimatum. He said the proposals were unacceptable and that continuing talks in Istanbul without real decisions is pointless. Zelensky added that Ukraine is ready for a meeting with Putin at any time and proposed a ceasefire to help prepare for such a summit. He also said international monitoring of the truce could be discussed and that Ukraine would appreciate support for the idea from US President Donald Trump. Putin commented on ceasefire proposals, saying that any ceasefire would likely be used by Ukraine to bring in more weapons from the West. Meanwhile, Germany is stressing unity with Ukraine and the need to pursue diplomacy. Germany's foreign minister said that Chancellor Friedrich Merz will tell US President Donald Trump during his upcoming visit that Europe stands firmly with Ukraine and that no chance for peace should be missed. Germany also added that Russia's military success in Ukraine was never expected and stated clearly Russia will fail.
Hope and fear are clashing in Bulgaria as the country prepares to join the Eurozone. With the green light from Brussels, Bulgaria is set to adopt the euro in January 2026. The country hopes for smoother trade flows and a seat at the ECB's governing council. For businesses, adopting the euro is expected to streamline transactions, reduce currency exchange risks, and position Bulgaria as a more attractive destination for tourists.
I expect a growth in the business, especially after entering the Eurozone, because it will be much easier for everyone within the Eurozone to understand our value, to understand our offerings, and to understand that Bulgaria is one of the most attractive countries for winter and for summer vacation.
But across Bulgaria, public opinion is deeply divided. A recent Eurobarometer poll showed that half the population opposes adopting the euro, fearing price hikes and economic instability. There are widespread concerns that the currency switch could trigger price increases, as seen in other countries during euro transitions in recent years.
It's hard to see it as something positive, because we are an impoverished country. We have become not a third world country, but a fourth world country.
Trust in institutions is low after 4 years of political instability, weak coalitions and repeated snap elections. Concerns are strongest in rural areas where the average monthly income is below the national average of 2,443 lira, or roughly $1,420.
People in rural areas, especially elderly people, they are at higher risk. Not so much of the prices itself. Again, we have a very competitive retail market, but I think that elderly people are at risk at the moment of the change of the currency, especially those that have their savings in their own homes, money in cash.
With elections behind and Eurozone entry ahead, Bulgaria faces a delicate transition where hopes for economic growth are shadowed by the fears of those who feel left behind.
Conflict zones are increasingly disrupting global aviation, with airline executives warning of rising operational costs, airspace restrictions, and safety threats from missiles, drones, and GPS spoofing. According to Reuters, airlines face growing losses from cancelled flights and costly rerouting, often on short notice. Airspace closures over Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, India, Pakistan, and parts of Africa have left fewer viable flight paths. Compared to 5 years ago, more than half the countries on a Europe-Asia route now need careful review, said OPS Group's Mark Z. Since October 2023, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has brought drones and missiles dangerously close to major routes. Russian airports, including Moscow, regularly shut down due to drone threats, while GPS jamming is surging near conflict areas. India and Pakistan recently closed airspace to each other's carriers amid hostilities. The worst risk is a civilian aircraft being shot down. In December, a Russian missile downed an Azerbaijan Airlines plane that crashed in Kazakhstan, killing 38 people. In October, a cargo plane was shot in Sudan, killing 5. 6 commercial planes have been downed since 2001, with 3 near misses. International Air Transport Association's Willie Walsh called for better information sharing among governments to ensure civil aviation safety. Though accident rates are down, these figures exclude war-related incidents. Each airline navigates this threat landscape differently, relying on a mix of government advisories and internal assessments. Since 2022, Western airlines avoiding Russian airspace face higher costs, while others like China and India benefit from shorter routes. Singapore Airlines Amsterdam-bound SQ326 has taken 3 different paths in just over a year, through Afghanistan, Iraq, and now avoiding Pakistan, as conflict zones shift. Pilots are also concerned. IATA says airlines should judge flight safety, but history shows commercial pressure can distort decisions, warned pilot rep Paul Reuter. Crews can refuse flights over conflict zones, and most airlines respect that.
Syrians are returning from Turkey as their homeland seeks to rebuild after years of a civil war that forced them to leave. At Bab al-Salame crossing in Aleppo's countryside, trucks loaded with belongings await re-entry. Authorities say the daily number of returnees is increasing and is expected to double to the thousands as Turkish schools close for the holidays.